Perfect. Okay, let's crack on, guys. So thank you very much for joining us. And for the next sort of half an hour or so, we'll be talking about how to fly a helicopter and what's involved in getting a helicopter license. So again, welcome. We're recording or broadcasting from the office here at Redcliffe at the hangar, and I've got Rob with me here. So say hello, Rob.
G'day guys, how you going?
So that's the pictures of the two of us. So Rob and myself, Mick. Rob's the CFI here at the school. He's also Deputy Chief Pilot for the company. Rob, do you want to talk quickly about how you got into flying, or just roughly your flying background?
Well, I started learning flying when I was 11 years old. Two cushions, couldn't reach the pedals. Barely see over the dash of a Cessna 152. My old man's a private pilot, so I got into it that way. Was flying fixed wing for a little while until I went out to a station in 2003, and a few of the helicopter boys took me for a fly, and I haven't been back in a plane since. It's all been helicopters for me.
Yeah, same thing. I did Air Force cadets and stuff like that through school and did little fixed wing aircraft, but then I was lucky enough to get picked up by the Army and did all my flying training through the Army. So Iroquois Black Hawks, and now out teaching folks, and mainly here at school. We'll go through our helicopters later on. But just quickly, before we actually kick off into the content and the training, if you can just drop us a note in the questions there, and just give us an idea about what's the thing you most want to get out of today, and I guess the reason why you're on the call as well. So just after a little feedback, to get an idea of what sort of experience levels you come from, and yeah, basically what you're trying to get out of today the most. If you're not used to the webinar controls, you should have a little floating panel there somewhere, and there'll be a question section where you'll be able to type things in. And as you type those, we'll see them come up. So just drop any questions you've got into that section. All right, so no one's got any questions at the moment, so we will keep cracking on rather than hold that up. So the first thing is that life is pretty short, and you want to get the most out of it. And it's no use sort of sitting in a job that you don't enjoy. And there's no shortage of people out there in the world who are sitting in cubicle jobs in an office somewhere and are just purely existing, whereas there's so much more to life out there. Now, helicopter-wise, there's operations around the world, all different types of things you can think of. So this one here, I'm pretty sure is either Papua New Guinea or Noumea or Solomon Islands. This one here is a camera ship chasing cars in the Dakar rally in Africa. Yeah, and helicopters, like if you're a helicopter, you might even one day get in a position where you actually save someone's life. So that's the type of jobs that are out there. We're going to be moving pretty quick today, just purely because it is lunch and we've got flights after this, but also you guys have probably got other things you need to do after your lunch break. So that's just check that. And look, when we get to the end, basically, obviously, we're going to try and show you the quickest way of getting through the training and what we recommend is the best way to go. So we'll give you guys, I guess, the natural next step there. So objectives today, we want to go through, learn the different names of the flight controls, what they actually do, and then a quick chat about what's involved in getting a helicopter license and the steps you need to go through for that. So, Rob, I might hand over to this next bit here if you want to take us through the flight controls.
No worries. All right, guys, so we're going to just learn about the flight controls here and the primary effects of those controls in forward flight. So first of all, we're going to look at the cyclic, and as indicated on the graph there, the cyclic that's in the Robinson is actually specific for the Robinson. It doesn't look like that in any other helicopter that you'll experience. So the cyclic is free to move in any direction, 360 degrees. Now what that does is control the disc attitude, therefore controls the fuselage attitude. So when we talk about an attitude, we talk about where something sits in relation to the horizon. The cyclic is very, very sensitive, and it's used in the natural sense, which means that if you push the cyclic forward, the nose will go down. And very importantly, again with the Robinsons and some other helicopters as well, With the cyclic, you cannot let it go. All right, so with the cyclic, if we move the cyclic forward and aft, we'll change our attitude and our airspeed, as indicated there. So forward cyclic, as you can see, the nose pitches down, which means the horizon will move up the windscreen and the airspeed increases. We pull the cyclic back or aft, the nose will pitch up, which means the horizon moves down the windscreen, which will cause the aircraft to slow down. Okay, moving the cyclic left and right will cause a roll, either to the left or to the right. So next we move on to the collective. And the collective, it's called a collective because it collectively increases and decreases pitch on the main rotor blades. It also controls lift generated by the main rotor blades and used in the natural sense. So essentially, if you want to climb the aircraft, you raise the collective up. If you want to descend, you push the collective down toward the floor and the aircraft will descend. Oh, there we go. So we raise collective, the aircraft climbs. And if we lower the collective, it'll go back down. And with all of these controls, you just need really, really small inputs. The collective controls power, and we measure that on the manifold pressure gauge. It's measured in inches of mercury. So as we raise collective, we're demanding more from the engine. The engine has to work harder. So what will happen is on the manifold pressure gauge, the needle will increase. So when we climb the aircraft, we raise collective, the needle will come up to 24 inches, and that's it's around the power setting we use to climb. And for a normal straight and level flight, anywhere from around 21 to 22 inches of power. When we descend, anything down to around the 15 inches of power will get the aircraft descending. Okay, and there's a limit on that as well, which is imposed by the manufacturer, Robinson, and it is to make sure we don't exceed 24.7 inches of manifold pressure. Okay, so next we've got the throttle. Now the throttle is a twist grip. It's just like an outboard or an outboard motor on a boat or a motorbike. However, it is the opposite. So what that means is if you want to roll the throttle on, you need to wind the throttle away from you. So as it says there for the throttle, it's a twist grip that's located on the end of the collective. The throttle controls our engine and our rotor RPM. It is very sensitive, so you only need to we say it's a gentle squeeze to change the RPM. The Robinson, like most helicopters, has a governor. So essentially, what that means, it's a device which is put on to control the throttle for the pilot. So as long as that governor is working in flight, we don't have to watch the RPM very closely. We don't have to manipulate the throttle as much as we would. Okay, and finally, we're moving on to the pedals. Now the pedals are located at our feet, and they control the tail rotor in the back there. So the pedals are used to maintain the nose direction in the hover, and when we're flying, say cruising at 1,000 feet and about 80 knots, it's we use a term called balance. So it's used to the pedals are used to balance in forward flight and maintain nose direction in a hover. So once the pedals are applied and set, they must be held in that position as well. So we won't need to move the pedals unless we start changing our power settings. Okay, as indicated there, when we apply left pedal, the nose yaws around to the left. and right pedal, the nose will yaw around to the right. Okay, so I'm just going to have a look here and see if we have any questions on controls. And there's no questions yet on the controls and their operations. So we'll move on. Okay, so we'll talk about a few topics here, and that is on how we get a license. The first one is a trial flight. Now it's called a trial introductory flight. It's basically a very, well, as the name suggests, an introduction onto the very first lesson. So generally, what we do is we get the student in, and we'll show them around the aircraft, around either the Robinson or the Schweitzer, and we'll just point out just different parts on the machine. We'll then have about a 20 to 30-minute brief, just similar to what we've just done there, on the just the primary effects of controls in forward flight. Following that, we then go for a fly, where we head up from Redcliffe. We track north up around to Bribie Island, where we'll do a little bit of low-level flying around the trees. We'll do a confined area landing, which is essentially just a landing away from a prepared surface. Head back to Redcliffe, and if the student is game enough, we'll demonstrate. It's a simulated engine failure, where we don't actually turn the throttle off or turn the engine off. We just wind the throttle back into the idle position, and we glide back to Earth. It's one of those common misconceptions that if the engine fails in a helicopter, that all is lost, and it's the aircraft crashes, and that's not true. It is very safe. Okay, so that's a trial flight. Next, we have aviation medical. So there's two medicals that need to be done to obtain a license. We have what we call a Class 1 and a Class 2 medical. And now that really depends on what license you want to achieve. If you want to get a commercial license, you have to get what's called a Class 1 medical. Now, the Class 1 medical is subject to a little bit more stricter conditions than a Class 2 medical or one for a private, and is valid for 12 months. A Class 2 medical, as I just said, that is for a private license and is valid for 4 years under the age of 40. And when you're over the age of 40, you've got to get renewed every 2 years. Student license. So a student license is obtained obviously while you're a student before you go solo. Essentially, it's forms we have to send down to CASA and pay some money to obtain a license. To obtain a license, you've got to get some documents sent off to ASIO and get basically a check on you to make sure that you're an upstanding citizen. Next, we have theory exams. So there are 7 theory subjects that need to be completed. Now, if you're obtaining a commercial license, the 7 subjects are done on 7 individual exams. And we'll have a look at that. I think it's on the next slide. It actually lists exactly what subjects. If you're doing a private license, it's still the 7 subjects to study. They don't go into the theory as in depth as a commercial. But instead of doing 7 individual exams, you study the 7 subjects, and it's just 1 exam to sit. Practical flying training. So the flying is done for a commercial license over 105 hours. It's actually done over 125 hours, but if you conform to three conditions, then you can do it under 105 hours of training. A private license is subject to a 50-hour course. And now these are minimums. We generally tell students that plan for a little bit more, and we can't say exactly how much more training. You know, for a commercial pilot, you may be at a standard to sit a test at 105 hours, or you might be 150 hours or 160 hours. It really depends on how quickly you pick up on things throughout your training. Finally, we have a flight test. Now, the flight test obviously is at the completion of your training, where we get what we call an independent ATO, which is an authorised testing officer, who will come in and generally spend a full day with you, asking you, well, first of all, going through what we call KDRs, which are it's a knowledge deficiency report, which means that anything you got wrong on your exam, you still need to make sure you know on those subjects. So you get asked about some theory, get some questions, then you'll get asked to plan a navigation exercise, and then it's the flight test of about 2.5 hours. So theory exams, here we go, that's what I was talking about. The theory subjects we have is listed in front. So we've got navigation, meteorology, human factors, air law, aerodynamics, aircraft general knowledge, and another one we call ops performance and planning, which is essentially just weight and balance. Now we do run courses here with Michael Scott, who is our theory instructor. He's actually an ex-student of ours who we've employed, and he gets a little bit of flying as well. But Michael's, I think he's 26 years old, and he's an ex-structural engineer. So he's a pretty switched on bloke, and he's very good explaining the theory topics. So he's a very good theory instructor with a very good pass rate as well. So the course we have runs over 8 weeks, and the next course we have is on the 3rd of November. So if you want any information on that as well, you can send us an email or give us a phone call. Okay, so next slide here just talks about the flying training, hours required depending on your license type. So I've gone through most of that stuff there. So age requirements. To obtain a student license and to go solo, you must be a minimum of 16 years of age. And as indicated there, 17 years old for a private license and 18 years old to hold a commercial license. Now, as I said, I started learning to fly when I was 11 years old. So you can start flying at any age. But again, there are just requirements for when you can go through milestones like going solo or obtaining a license. Once you pass a flight test, in our flight school here, we've got what's called a Blade of Fame, and it's where we get our guys or the students who have passed the test to sign their name. As you can see here, this is a guy called Arrow who's now flying in Thailand, and he passed his test with us. Would have been about October, November last year. All right, guys, well, that's pretty much my briefing done. So I'm just going to hand back over to Mick here.
Yeah, and there's a couple of questions come through, so we'll grab those shortly. But just as we finish up, I guess it's just thinking about where you're currently at as far as looking at flying training goes, or just where your career in general is. And look, we're not sure exactly why you turned up today. It could be a number of reasons. It could just be you're sick of your current job, or you're in a situation where there could be something just better out there that you want to be doing, or it could be that you've just always been an aviation crazy person since a kid, and you just love the flying side of things, or maybe you're just curious about sort of what goes on involved with flying a helicopter. So it could be any of those reasons. And look, we've gone through how the controls work in the helicopter, and then Rob's taking you through a bit of the process of how to actually get a license, the different steps involved. So look, the obvious question here is, and we said at the start that, if you're interested, we'll try and tell you the quickest way to go through and what the next obvious step would be. And Rob's taking you through with what the trial flight involves, the trial instruction flight. And again, it takes about 2 hours all up by the time you come in here, and we tell you the briefings and the aircraft walk around and show you through the aircraft. And then we actually do the flight. And then at the end of it, we'll have a photo and actually do up a certificate for you. So look, normally that's $365. That's the price here at August 2014 at the moment. But what we're going to do is, when you mention this webinar, because you're taking the time out to actually come along and show you're interested in learning how to fly a helicopter and a bit more about what's involved, if you mention this webinar, we'll take 10% off that price. And look, for the people who are ready to sort of move straight away and take action, be fast action takers, we'll also throw in a pilot's logbook for the first 2 people who actually book in for a TIFF. So if you're interested in that, the phone number there is at the bottom of the screen, or you can go through the website at aeropowerflightschool.com.au. All right, so yeah, look, we'll just move into the questions now. So there's a couple there we'll answer shortly that have been queued up, but if you want to use your chat box there and just start typing any questions you've got about helicopter flying, about careers, about what Rob's taking you through. We'll just, for the next 5 minutes or so, we'll just go through and answer some of these questions. So, Rob, is there any coming through there that you want to chat
Yeah,
about?
we've got here. I'm just reading this. Okay, so the first question here is one from Scott, and that is how to start the aircraft. Well, every aircraft varies, and it depends whether it's a piston or turbine aircraft. But every aircraft has a checklist, and on that checklist, obviously, has a sequence of start procedures. The starting sequence will be depicted by the aircraft manufacturer. So the sequence of how to do things and when to turn things on. All right, so I hope that answered your question, Scott. So I've got another one here. It says, what kind of work would you be looking at when you've just finished your CPL? Now, this is probably the toughest part of once you obtain a license is now finding a job. The industry in Australia has never been like it is in some parts overseas. So getting a job is going to be very, very tricky. Getting your first job. Things we do here to try and give you a bit of a boost in the right direction is we pay for a HR manager who's used to be a HR manager for one of the big airlines. She's now got her own company, and we pay her to go through when you're getting toward the end of your license. She'll sit down with you and build a resume, as well as going through some interview coaching techniques. And we've also given her a list of prospective employers that employ low-time pilots and guys fresh out of training. And so what she'll do is she'll then start advertising the fact that you've done your license and you're looking for a job. Another one is the Class 1 medical for the helicopter is same for fixed wing? Short answer, yes, it is. So if you have a Class 1 medical, if you're, say, training in fixed wing and you've got a Class 1 medical, come over and you start training in helicopters, the Class 1 medical is the same. All right. Another one here from Clay is, when you set the pedals, does that mean you only change the pedals when you change your speed or attitude? That's one of the reasons to change pedals. Your pedal setting will change when either you speed up or slow down. So you need to change the attitude first to obtain different speeds, but you'll also find when it comes through, if you change your power. So when you raise collective, what happens is that we're increasing the power from the engine, and the torque from the engine will try and yaw the aircraft to the right. So therefore, as we raise collective, the aircraft yaws right, we need to apply left pedal. So changes in speed and also power setting will require us to change pedal inputs.
We've probably got about time for one more, if there's one more question there.
Okay, so the last one's just come through is, will I be more employable if I have a fixed wing license as well as a helicopter? Again, look, it's one of those questions. It depends on the employer.
There's very few jobs out there where you would turn up and fly in a helicopter in the afternoon, go and fly in
A plane.
an airplane. I know of.
No, there's some of the mustering companies will have, say, a Cessna 210 that'll do some ferry runs between properties, but they might own a couple of helicopters on the station as well. So very rarely do we get guys that'll be able to jump into both roles. Us as a company, we only have helicopters. Therefore, the fixed wing side doesn't apply to us. We don't look at that. We look at a helicopter experience and the helicopter license.
I'm not sure if you probably went through the hours requirements.
Yeah.
What you find is if you haven't started any flying training already, and you think about maybe I'll do the fixed wing first, the problem is you then come out with about 60, 70 helicopter hours, and you're competing with people who have 110, 120 helicopter hours. And it doesn't seem like that many hours, but when you go into that first job, they've almost got double the experience on helicopters that you've got. So it's just, it's not a cut and dry. You probably want to come and talk to some folks and then come and chat to us about that. But yeah, you obviously can do the fixed wing and then reduce your hours for the helicopter. But if you're going for a helicopter job, it's kind of not so helpful to have
No.
the reduced hours.
That's probably one of the things I didn't mention as part of our requirements is if you're doing a conversion. So if you already hold, say, a fixed wing license and want to go to a rotary wing, that's one of the things I didn't go through. But if you shoot us an email at aeropowerflightschool.com.au, we've got a training brochure here which has all of the required information and prices on there as well. We can send out to you.
Yeah, or if you actually can grab that off the website.
Okay.
So if you head over to aeropowerflightschool.com.au, you'll be able to see the pictures of the brochure there and be able to grab that off the website. It's probably the easiest. But otherwise, we're out of time there, folks, because Rob needs to jump back out and go flying again. So thank you very much for spending some time with us and going through. If you have any more questions we didn't get to answer, please shoot them through an email or through the website, or just ring up and give us a call. If there's anything at all we can help you with, we'd love to, because we love flying, and we'd love to share it with as many other people who want to be involved. So thanks very much, folks, and cheers.
Thanks, guys.